Now, the topic for our next session is bailout options in a difficult gallbladder. So, for that session to chair, I would like to invite our chairperson, Dr. Mahendra Narwaria from Ahmedabad. He is the founder and director of Asian Bariatric and Cosmetic Surgery at Ahmedabad. And our second chairperson is Dr. Ajay Sharma. He is currently working as a professor and head of the Department of Surgical Gastroenterology, Mahatma Gandhi Hospital, Jaipur. Sir did his MBBS and MS, MBBS from SMS and MS from Bikaner. Then later on, he got his super specialization in surgical gastro from SGPGI. Welcome, sir, to chair the session.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Narwari, I request you to invite the speaker.
Thank you, Ajay, for inviting. Thank you, Professor Kapoor, for giving me this opportunity. And I'm enjoying this session since morning. And it is like revisiting gallbladder once again. Thank you.
I think I would like to add to that. So, not since morning, since yesterday 4 p.m.
Yes, I try to look. So, let me invite Professor Vishal Sailath. To me, he looks like a Gujarati, maybe from Singapore. And he's a senior consultant of HPV surgery at Ten Tock Seng Hospital, and he's a program director of PG courses, and he's director of Surgical Science Training Center. Thank you, Vishal, and the call is for you. Thank you. Vishal,
thank you. Thank you. I have sent my PowerPoint slides with audio. If possible, they can flash it from the Vision Plus site. Otherwise, I will try to share the screen.
Video, can we play this video? Okay, you can start your presentation from your side. Dr. Vishal, you can play.
Yeah, give me 1 minute. I will.
Yeah, you can show your PPT slide.
You can see now the PowerPoint slides.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think good evening, everyone. Thanks, Professor Kapoor and the whole organizing team of the first Jaipur Surgical Festival. Is playing on its own. Just hold on. Yeah. Give me 1 minute. Okay, I have nothing to disclose. I think this is a video I've sent you. So I think the bailout word, we are quite familiar, but in the context of gallbladder, it just means that we have to do something different compared to what we are already doing. So thereby the word, bailout is pretty familiar from the financial crisis, which we all have agreed or we observed. So what is difficult cholecystectomy? I think difficult cholecystectomy is a term which pretty much widely discussed this morning. It can be difficult from anatomy, difficult because of pathology, or it could be difficult because of the surgeon himself makes the operation difficult. That's why we just discussed there is nothing easy. Rough tissue handling, deviation from the basic principles, etc., so on and so forth. On the right side is a photo of Sir William Halsted. He himself was misdiagnosed with an angina while actually he had a right upper abdominal pain, and that came as a gallbladder chronic cholecystitis, and that was also difficult cholecystectomy. I think the pathology, chronic inflammation does obliterate the Kalos triangle and adds to the intraoperative difficulty of a surgeon. Difficulty and severity are two different things. Difficulty, as we also discussed, it is a spectrum from biliary colic to cholecystitis to empyema and Mirizi, and severity is different. It determined by organ dysfunction and the underlying patient comorbidity. So many times difficulty predicts morbidity, intraoperative difficulty predicts morbidity, while severity is a kind of predicting mortality. So they are a little bit different. And here there is this large population study which actually did show that gallbladder itself can contribute to mortality, and we shouldn't ignore cholecystitis. But can we predict difficult cholecystectomy? I think this morning we have been hearing about various ways of predicting difficulty, and one of the common is an ultrasound. But I think all of the speakers have also emphasized it's also demographic, careful history, the past medical records, blood investigations, as well as sonography or imaging, which showing dilated or Mirizi syndrome kind of. And when we know that there is going to be difficulty, we should not delegate to the training or do the operation after office hours. So again, when you face with a difficult cholecystectomy, you have to do something differently, and that is called as bailout. Difficulty again is a very personal viewpoint. For some people, nothing is difficult. Everything seems to be easy for some people. But again, I think we all have to be measured and be aware that there may be pitfalls. And I think this symposium itself is a very testament to endorse the bailout principles. So before I go on to bailout, I think we all should know certain basic things about cholecystectomy. And this morning we have been hearing about critical view of safety. I think the point I wish to emphasize, the international guidelines actually say that critical view of safety should be achieved in all patients. But the problem is we cannot achieve that. In fact, the large cohort studies and this afternoon, the few speakers did allude that in about 15% of the patients, it is really not possible because of frozen Kalos triangle and obliteration from the inflammation and scarring. So Tokyo guidelines also propose that if critical view cannot be achieved, we should resort to a bailout procedure. And again, despite resorting to bailout critical view, the bile duct injuries continue to occur. So what is the critical view of safety? And again, there are three things which are widely taught. And I would argue that the third point, which is two and only two structures, I would say that sometimes you have a posterior cystic artery. Sometimes you actually don't have two structures, but you may have 3 or 4 structures. As far as you don't dissect the common hepatic duct or common bile duct is perfectly fine. So you don't need to have 2 structures. The lower third of the gallbladder, I think, is very important. Some people actually get the critical hole. They don't really get a big window. They just get a small hole or a small window, and that is a recipe for injury. Again, 94% of the 3 experts agreed that whenever there is a severe fibrosis and scarring in the Kalos triangle, one should stop. One should have a pause and then decide what next to do. There are various understandings of critical view of safety alone. And one of the system is a scoring system, the point-based system, where you get 2 points for the best identification of each aspect of the critical view and 0 point for nothing. And again, if the score is less, then you need to actually perform some form of additional dissection. But if you feel that additional dissection is dangerous, then you should stop and you should bail out. So that point is called inflection point. So Prof. Strasberg has given this concept of inflection point, which is defined as the moment at which a decision is made to stop the surgery. You don't do the left cholecystectomy as you intended to do, but you actually do something else, either subtotal or even completely abandon the procedure. And that point is a surgeon's mind, his brain. He thinks he should continue or stop. You can't substitute that judgment. There's an individual judgment. So bailout choices generally are determined by before the incident happening or complication during surgery, or after a complication happens during surgery. I think you all heard about open conversion. It can allow your hand to be there, tactile feedback. You can put a finger, you can see the cystic duct opening and so on and so forth. Generally, subtotal cholecystectomy is a standard, is a gold standard, a bailout procedure, and there are 2 ways of dealing with it. The other option would be just open the gallbladder, let the pus come out, that's it, and just put a drain and don't bother even to do anything further. If you see something like cystic duct or a Hartmann's spout, maybe you can put some stitches and occlude. So non-removal of the gallbladder is a choice. Some people even say fundus first technique is a good bailout. I personally have my own reservations with this technique, partly because when you come down from the fundus, you really can't see the cystic artery, cystic duct, and it's a kind of recipe for bile duct injury. You really cannot get the critical view by doing a fundus first. So if during an operation we have a complication, then also we may have to do bailout. I think in that instance, the bailout is different. You have to actually call for help. You have to actually get a HPB guy if you have a HPB consult available. You may have to convert to open. You may have to leave behind the drain. In those instances where there is a bile duct injury or a vascular injury, if you are not HPB certified, please don't do the repair, because you will never be able to defend in the court of law if you are under scrutiny. And even if you are a HPB certified, you try not to do bailout of your own problems. Try to get a colleague just to validate, just to endorse what's happening. So again, this we have been talking time and again about cholegography from Prof. Kapoor, who has propagated this term, and this has been validated in a large consensus study, where about 20% of the surgeons agree that getting a second member of the team really is very helpful and is as good as doing an intraoperative cholangiogram. What about open conversion? I mean, conversion alone is not a bailout procedure. You can convert to an open, but the difficulty is going to be there. So the bailout happens what we do after conversion. So generally conversion itself is not a bailout, but again, the decision to when to convert, when to persist with the gallbladder surgery laparoscopically, that's individual matter. And to convert is not really a crime, as we also talked about, because of inversion of the training, the familiarity with the open cholecystectomy is gone. Again, when we convert, you need to audit your own conversion rates. And as we heard from the experience in Turkey, the conversion rate is below 10%. There is all comers, more than 1,000 patients. In my own experience, our conversions are reported. Our conversions are below 5% for all comers. But if you take a difficult gallbladder with cirrhotic liver, percutaneous tubes, then midline laparoscopy, conversion about 10-15% is acceptable. So again, the most common bailout procedure for a difficult gallbladder before any bile leak and before the vascular injury or biliary injury, would be a subtotal. So I actually did a meta-analysis and systematic review of 1,700 subtotal cholecystectomy. And I actually found that three things. The conversion rate is about 7.7%. Despite doing subtotal cholecystectomy, the bile duct injury is never zero. So subtotal also doesn't give immunity to bile duct injury. And the third, which is subtotal cholecystectomy, increases the morbidity of retained stone as well as bile leak, for which you may have to do post-operative ERCP procedure. So again, doing a subtotal cholecystectomy, fine, it can be done, but doesn't make the bile duct injury completely go away. Now, within the subtotal cholecystectomy, there are two techniques, fenestrating and reconstituting. Generally speaking, fenestrating, you just try to attempt to close the cystic duct from within, while reconstituting, you actually cut at the Hartmann's area or even in the mid-body of the gallbladder and put some stitches and occlude the Hartmann's pouch to make a new gallbladder. So I think in a reconstituting cholecystectomy, the complications were lower. While fenestrating cholecystectomy, the bile leak, the retained stone, the open conversions were all higher in the systematic review which I did. So again, these forest plots does show that between the two techniques of subtotal cholecystectomy, reconstituting is better than fenestrating. And I wonder if fenestrating is itself a bailout procedure when reconstituting cholecystectomy cannot be done. So I personally perform reconstituting in all possible patients, and if then I cannot reconstitute a gallbladder, I will resort to subtotal. And again, when we talk on bailout, we must remember Prof. Strasberg and his unit, and they have reported data. And they actually audited and asked surgeons, why did they do subtotal cholecystectomy? The two most common reasons were inflammation in the cystic triangle and gallbladder was fused to the porta hepatis. These were the two common reasons. In that paper itself, we can know that about 10% of the patients, they actually affront open cholecystectomy. This is a little bit more. My personal experience is not, I would generally start almost every patient with the lab. 50% open conversion, they actually documented. Well, we can't fault people for converting, but again, to me, this is on the higher side of conversion. Even in the difficult cases, the conversion should be about 10 to 15. So again, if you look at the experience from the Prof. Steven Strasberg and his own unit, you actually know that subtotal cholecystectomy is not easy. The morbidity is there, the complications are there. And even they reported there is no bile duct injury, and we have heard Dr. Sikora as well, there are no injuries for last 2 decades. But again, if you scrutinize softly, it is how you classify an injury. Type A injury, which is a cystic duct problem, if that is not considered an injury, of course, there is no bile duct injury. So again, to conclude, subtotal cholecystectomy is not really easy. The difficulty is there, and it does not give you immunity towards bile duct, but maybe it reduces the bile duct injury. And subtotal cholecystectomy gives a trade-off of your bile duct injury compared to bile leak and a retained stone. So you actually have a high probability of a retained stone and a bile leak, and you may actually have to do another bailout procedure like post-operative ERCP in those instances. What other bailout choices do we have? So other bailout choices just, leave a drain behind, cut open the gallbladder, drain the gallbladder, leave a drain, cholecystostomy kind of approach, either laparoscopic or open. Very rarely you can get away because 90% of the time, because of inflammation, the cystic duct may be occluded. But sometimes you will have a bile leak and you will have to do post-operative ERCP. Again, I generally don't have to resort to these options, but it depends on your own experience and resources available. These are the choices, and these are valid choices and acceptable choices. The point being, when to resort to these choices, when to bail out to a subtotal, reconstituting, fenestrating, or pursue the Kalos window and critical view, I think that's a personal matter. And I would just say, train yourself to avoid the personal ego, because here is the patient safety at stake. I think since eternal, we are aware that it's not about the knowledge. Everybody knows what is Kalos triangle. Everybody knows about the critical view of safety. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry doing gallbladder knows all these things. But still, the bile duct injury continues to happen. Why so? So again, it's not the knowledge, is the application, is the understanding, the personal limitations, the self-awareness, the situational awareness. But again, when to stop? You can just train the people, but the certain attributes are actually acquired by oneself, that those are non-trainable. So the individual surgeon need to learn his or her own limits. And again, technical skills are, if they are important, non-technical skills are also important. Now I'll just discuss three scenarios. One is the gallbladder cannot be identified, it's too small, it's shrunken, almost like a thumb size. In those situations, if you pursue, the bile duct will appear like a gallbladder because the bile duct will be distended in those situations. The problem is, don't persist with the identifying Kalos and all that. You'll have problems. So I generally check for imaging, see there is a stone, cut the fundus of the thumb-like gallbladder, take the stone out and repair it. That's it. If you're not familiar with cutting an intracorporeal suturing and anatomy is not clear, back off. You can abandon the operation altogether. You will not be faulted. There will be people who will defend you in the court of law if you're under scrutiny. Bail out in a case where only you can see the fundus of the gallbladder. I think this is very common in acute scenario. In most instances, you can bring the duodenum, the omentum, the colon down by just sweeping action and some persistence. If there's an acute and chronic inflammation, you can probably just cut the fundus or at the mid body, retrieve the stones and do a subtotal. Sometimes we call that as hemicholecystectomy. That means the cutting is even above the Hartmann's spouse. That's perfectly fine. But you may leave behind some stones. So you have to be a bit diligent. I sometimes may put a choledocoscope of 3 or 5 mm through, go into the cystic duct and make sure there is no remnant stone behind. Again, if you are not familiar, back off, leave a drain. Sometimes if the colon is too stuck to the gallbladder, I may fire a stapling rope, and this is fine. Again, it's the judgment call. I'm not proposing that you please get a stapling device, but in very difficult instances, duodenal colonic fistula, you may actually have to do that. If the Kalos is obliterated, what to do? I think the most important thing is don't use diathermy anyhow. Only cut what you can see, and always cut anything above the fissure of Gans. Don't go below the fissure of Gans. And you should know your own inflection point. No, all this talking and data is fine, but what is your own threshold? Nobody can substitute that. A surgeon has his own threshold and try to acquire that and follow the sound principles of critical view of safety and so on. I personally had a case where I just lifted up the CBD, considering that was a cystic duct. But I thought that structure looked a little bit larger caliber. I saw another blood vessel going around it. And that's how I realized that this probably is not a cystic duct, but I actually have dissected a bit lower. So I think be aware of these pitfalls when you dissect. Very important that you pay close attention to the anatomy. Again, bile duct injury is a multifactorial process. It just doesn't happen overnight. You have multiple contributing reasons, and some of the reasons are directly related to a surgeon. Misperception, error of skill, careless use of diathermy, and some reasons that a surgeon is a direct prognosticator for a bile duct injury. And as you can see, in a good unit, you can actually significantly reduce the risk of bile duct injury. Now I'll talk of what to bail out after you have a bile leak. So if you have a bile leak, please stop the process. Just take a breath, do some reflection, what actually is going on. Do you have a facility for cholangiogram? If you have, please perform the cholangiogram through that pinpoint area or wherever the leak is happening. Check the anatomy, interpret the cholangiogram properly. The problem sometimes is not in doing the cholangiogram, is the interpretation of the cholangiogram, because only 2 dimensions. You may have to use the CM, rotate it and get a proper angles. If the patient is stable, just leave a drain behind. If you are not HPB trained, the best thing you can do is don't do anything more. Stop. Call the HPB guy if the HPB guy is around. Otherwise, just leave a drain behind. If the patient is unstable, is not unstable from that bile, is unstable from the bleeding or some other problem, check for bleeding. If you have a bleeding, it is most commonly from the liver bed. Sometimes the middle hepatic vein and the tributaries are bit superficial and they get injured. And if that is the case, your topical hemostatic will do just good enough with some pressure. But if you really fancy, you can take some stitches. Bleed from the omentum are extremely notorious. They may clot, but they will always rebleed. Always clip. If you have omental bleed, apply the clip. These are venous bleed. There will be no vasospasm. There will be always a reactionary or secondary hemorrhage after a few days if you have a significant omental bleed. Now, if you bleed from cystic artery, of course, you need to identify it and ligate it if there is a stump available. Sometimes these may be the reasons you may want to convert to an open, because your hands are there, your fingers are there, you can put a pressure, you can do a precision suturing. Bleeding from the right hepatic artery, you have various choices. Call for help. Either you can ligate it or you and accept the liver ischemia and its sequelae, or you can get some help for microvascular reconstruction. Bleeding from the portal vein just means that you are very reckless. Bleeding from the portal vein is a never event, should not ever happen. And sometimes converting the flow ports from 5 mm to 10 mm may give you some help. If the bleeding is ongoing, don't convert to open. Stop the bleeding, put some pressure, put a clamp, hold it in place with manual pressure while you actually make a Cocker's incision. Now, worse even, if you have a bile as well as bleeding problem, biliovascular injury, these are significant problems. This will lead you and your patient both into trouble. And the best advice is don't do anything further. Call for help. And in this instance, the help must come. Even if it's not a HPB, even if your own colleague, your junior, your senior, whoever is available, the help must come. And you probably have to disclose to family. Most of the time, you may have to resort to damage control principles which are in a periphery. In a tertiary center, almost always a hepatobiliary trained expert will be available. But generally, you may have to resort to damage control surgeries and try and record video recording. If you're in a private practice, your facility, infrastructure, video record all the cases. And in my experience, when I tell them to record, they will record everything. But the one video I want to retrieve back, they will say, I forgot to record, sorry, and all that. So try to record all the cases. What about technology? What about indocyanine green, fluorescence, and cholangiogram and all that? I have done a meta-analysis, and actually ICG is good enough for extrahepatic biliary tree. IOC is good enough for intrahepatic biliary tree. Again, all these things are there. They are good in biliary colic, when there is acute, when there is chronic cholecystitis, when there is an anatomical problem. All these are useless. They generally don't help you much in prevention. After your injury, all these can, IOC can help you delineate the injury maybe, and then you can do a proper repair. But in terms of preventive, in terms of intraoperative guidance, I think these are still, the technology still is the infancy. The only guidance is you and yourself and the preoperative imaging you have. That is it. So again, bailout and ICG has been studied, but there is no impact on indocyanine green in the rate of the bailout procedures. So I'm coming to conclusion, ladies and gentlemen. Bailout is actually, in a difficult gallbladder is a spectrum. You either do a planned scheduled cholecystectomy, or you do a reconstituting subtotal, or you do a fenestrating, or you just do some form of non-standard gallbladder like a hemicholecystectomy or a fundectomy, or you just leave the gallbladder open drainage and leave a drain behind. The issue is this will help you reduce or eliminate bile duct injury, but that problem will be replaced by a retained stone and a bile leak, which will need a post-operative ERCP. So bailout.
Dr. Vishal, sorry to interrupt, but I think you will have to conclude.
Bailout is just a part, and ladies and gentlemen, so this is my concluding slide, Prof. Familiarize yourself with various bailout choices. bailout also can have inherent morbidity, as I alluded to. And generally, bile duct injury doesn't happen because of ignorance of Kalos and critical view, but because one persists in dissecting and achieving that critical view. IOC and ICG probably have some role, but is not very well defining bailout. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you. It was superb and a crisp presentation, and you were at a super fast speed too, as if you are going out to bail out somebody. But very nice presentation. We learned a lot from this. And I think if you have questions from the audience, we can take few if time permits. Ajay?
See the questions and comments in the chat if you can. Maybe you can just carry on and we can restrict the discussion time to about 5 minutes.
In chats, I think Dr. Rabela Pradeep has asked that in a subtotal cholecystectomy, why should you have a bile duct injury? Dr. Vishal. And then
Yeah.
subsequently, Dr. Satyakal has mentioned
Yeah,
that yes,
generally
it should.
you shouldn't have a bile duct injury in a subtotal cholecystectomy unless your subtotal cholecystectomy is going very low, almost at the Hartmann's pouch and cystic duct junction. So it is sometimes possible if you are very low, you may actually injure an accessory or an aberrant duct or low lying, or sometimes the injury will be classified as a Strasbourg category A injury, where you have bile leak. Even you have done a reconstituting approach, if there is a bile leak from the stump, some purist people would actually document in their database as a category A injury. So I think this is just a literature review. I am not, we have to go to each and individual case which is classified what is injury. But the point being, even the data of subtotal cholecystectomy, when we analyze, people still have injury.
Okay, I think very validly said. So Dr. Narvaria, your comments please, and then we'll conclude.
Yeah, I think Dr. Sanjay Nagral has pointed a question that it is difficult to take sutures when we are doing a penetrating cholecystectomy laparoscopically. Is there any technique to suture this cystic duct from inside the lumen?
Again, there is no, I think the techniques are the same. You just need to have a good precision suturing, not go too deep to injure the common bile duct or the common hepatic duct, not go too deep up in the hilum of the liver to injure the inflow of the liver. And you need to know exactly where is the cystic duct opening. You cannot just estimate and take any estimation is wrong. You need to be precise. If you know where exactly is the opening, stitch it. If you don't see the opening, don't bother to stitch it. Leave the drain behind. So again, and the suture you use is generally you can use PDS. I have sometimes used VLOC. I've reported my experience of VLOC in doing a common bile duct exploration laparoscopically. So I think they are not approved for using in luminal structures, but barbed sutures absorb. To me, I think they are perfectly safe. And you could, if your intracorporeal suturing is not so great, you can just use a VLOC suture, and that is fine enough. Yeah.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you. Thank you for a nice presentation. Thank you, Professor Kapoor and Dr. Sharma. We conclude this session and we'll move to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you, Dr. Vishal, for a nice
Mahendra sir
presentation.
and Dr. Ajay Sharma sir for chairing